Fresh out the oven, it's Cinema Bums. I'm Emmett.
And I'm Wade.
Cinema Bums is a podcast where we watch through every single movie in a popular film franchise, one each week, to try and track how the storytelling changes over time. Today, we are continuing our X23 miniseries about Fox's X-Men films. We will fully spoil today's film, but try at all costs not to spoil any future entries in the series. Up right now, it's The Wolverine.
Woo!
Is your slogan fresh out the oven and then you call yourself Cinema Bums instead of Buns?
Yeah, Cinema Buns was taken twice over. So we're Cinema Bums, like we're kind of lazy, but also we're cinnamon buns.
Okay, cool. I dig it.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it, just like there would be in a cinnamon bun.
Who is this mysterious voice I hear?
Ooh, it's a cinnamon bun. What? All right.
I'm
Today,
hopefully getting a 3D printer for Christmas.
Whoa.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you
How
gonna
much do those cost? $8 billion?
are you gonna print out some Bitcoin with it?
Yeah, I'm going to print out so many illegal monies and then try and sell them.
Dude, we went to this antique store the other day, and they had old money, but like there was straight up like a $20 bill that just said $75 on it.
So
That's the American dream.
Oh man, when we had a yard sale for like as we were moving out, we were selling these gold like quarter cases that just had like 5 quarters in each of them, and people would walk up to us and be like, "How much?" I'm like, $125. And like I'm pretty sure one guy was like, "I'll give you 25 cents." Like,
Damn,
like,
that's the real American dream.
I'm not going to use them.
Quintuple's investment right there. With us, you might have thought it was one of the ghosts of the Christmas past, present, or future, or you might have thought that it was an actual cinnamon bun. Okay.
I love it when I'm in a host.
Today we're honored to have a special guest. He's a comedian, actor, painter, and Danny Brown impersonator, best known to our audience for his starring role as the titular Great Hulking Beast in Hayao Miyazaki's 1988 classic, My Neighbor Totoro. Please welcome Isaac Beckner.
Bro, that's straight up me.
Woo!
Thanks for being here, Isaac.
Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. It's lovely. You guys are great. Thanks so much for having me on. I love your show.
Isaac, let's just get right into it. What was your first experience with the X-Men in general?
Oh, my first experience with X-Men. I watched the back in like elementary school. I would like watch in passing the like Toon Disney one that eventually went to like Jetix or whatever. But that X-Men show, that that thing. So that's my history of it. Oh shoot! I also played the X-Men like beat 'em up game at this like local arcade growing up, and that was fun. Didn't know anything about the characters though.
Was it like a Street Fighter or something like that?
Kind of, sorta. Basically, you just like play as like Wolverine or Nightcrawler or Jean Grey, and you just like walk around the screen and beat up guys that look like Magneto.
Okay. Well, what was your? Did you watch any of the other movies of the?
I've seen pretty much all of them except for like Days of Future Past, I think.
So, what was your first experience with this particular? The Wolverine, 2013, James Mangold, The Wolverine. What was your first experience with it?
Today was my first experience with it. Yeah.
Have you seen any of the other Wolverine movies?
I saw X-Men Origins Wolverine, and then so does this take place in the universe of First Class?
Oh, yeah. Kind of. We're going to get into that, but maybe we should just get into it. Wait, does it take place
after the original trilogy?
Okay, so it's X1 through 3, not...
Yes, this one takes place after X3.
Okay, so where Patrick Stewart is still Professor X.
Yes, because he pops up at the end.
Okay, cool.
So So today was your first experience, huh?
Yes.
Okay, we can get into a little bit more of how you felt about your first experience of it. But Wade, would you first tell us a little bit about your first experience with this film?
Oh, yeah. My first experience was actually with you.
Mm-hmm.
We saw this film together in theaters with my Aunt Maria, who was the first person who got me into X-Men in the first place. The three of us together went and saw it, which was pretty cool. This was actually the movie that got me back into X-Men, I guess, because I had watched X2 a bunch as a kid, and then I had seen X3 once. I didn't watch Origins. I didn't watch First Class. And then when this was out in theaters, I think my Aunt Maria wanted to see it. So I was like, sure. And we all went and saw it together.
And what was your thoughts on it then?
I was really excited about it then. I didn't know. They didn't market it at all that it was a sequel to X3. Like, I assumed it was another prequel like Origins had been. So kind of like the moment, I think it's like 10 minutes into this movie where you realize that it takes place after that. And it's like dealing with the consequence of that was really exciting to me. Well, what was your first experience with it? And then I'll finish that thought.
Well, I remember watching it with you and being like, well, this is everything that you could want from a Wolverine movie. Like, that it was like as good as it could get, but also that it had like nothing to do with any of the other X-Men. It felt like the most standalone of all of the movies, and like the least to do with any of the other stuff too, right up until the very end. And I liked that about it at the time. And I also, my feelings on it have changed, but we'll talk about that. But at the time I was like, yo, this kicks ass. Like, this is sweet. It's gritty. It's violent.
Yeah, I will say that one of my initial thoughts of it was, like, even going into it, I was thinking, any movie that you put Wolverine in, it's like, he's not like Batman or like Superman. He can't really like hold back in any way. It's kind of like,
yeah,
like he can't not kill somebody if he's going to attack you. So it's like the body count in Wolverine movies is always just much higher than I feel like other superhero movies are.
That's a good point. His power is like stabbing you in the chest with knives. Like, that's his superpower.
And not just knives, like the hardest metal in the universe.
Dude, I was thinking, how strong must Wolverine be to pick up that Silver Samurai and throw him down the cliff at the end? Like, that thing has to be like 800 billion pounds.
Straight up, though.
Yeah, dude.
He's jacked in this.
He's huge jacked, man.
My other thought was that it's like so crazy that they made a sequel to The Last Stand. Like, now it makes sense, but like at the time, that was something that came out 7 years ago that no one had done anything with. And no one has said this is related to. Like, this would be like if they made a sequel to The Lone Ranger now.
Damn.
That's how it felt,
Straight up.
Now let's get into some stats and records about this film. This film was released in 2013. It was directed by James Mangold, who you may remember as also having directed Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, and all of your other dad's favorite movies. All of you daddy's favorites movies. All of the favorite movies of the dads.
All movies about Hugh Jackman going to Japan.
Yes, all of them.
Well, he also directed Hugh Jackman in Kate and Leopold, which was like the first post-original X-Men movie that Hugh Jackman did. So there's an old school connection there.
Oh.
Which I think it's like a time travel rom-com between Hugh Jackman, who is like a Renaissance era gentleman who meets like a hot young lady from the 90s. And it's like a rom-com about them.
So it's just a biopic of Hugh Jackman's life.
Yes, it's a biography. But yeah, this run that Mangold does, where he does Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, The Wolverine, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, and his next film is Indiana Jones 5. Like, I think that he is really put on Earth to deliver what dads want. Like, all of those movies are pitched directly to the dads of the world, but he's just like making them well for the most part.
He's also coming back with Mel Gibson's great return in what dads want.
Like, other people make movies for dads, like The Monuments Men still exists, but those aren't really the same level of quality that Mangold is going to bring to them.
This movie was written by Scott Frank and Mark Bombach.
Scott Frank, who also wrote Minority Report, and Mark Bombach, who has done a ton of stuff. He's a guy who works for sure. Not like a lot of things we would know, but like a guy who does a lot of things, including the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy. He wrote all of those.
Very good.
Yeah, they're so good.
The music is by Marco Beltrami. Anything there?
Who also did? Yeah, he also did 3:10 to Yuma with Mangold. So that's the connection there. He's most known for his scores on horror films and on westerns.
Okay.
Both of which have some sort of connection to this movie, but aren't quite there.
Yeah, didn't he do A Quiet Place?
Probably.
I think he did A Quiet Place.
Well, the cinematography was by Ross Emery.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of looking to figure out who this guy was. This was his first film ever.
Whoa.
After this, the year after, he did I, Frankenstein and The Giver, both of those hits. And then he never does another movie.
Well, after that one shot in The Giver, I can see why. You know the one I'm talking about. It was edited by Michael McCusker and had a budget of $132 million. Its box office was $414 million.
Good
so
job.
By our little standard that we've been running on, it needed to make about $265 million to pass, and it cleared that and some more. So good job. Good job,
the Wolverine.
Yeah, this movie was released July 26, 2013. So this is the first of these that we see that takes place after the Avengers, which is really like the big change for superhero movies post The Dark Knight. That's like the first tone style guide, where then we got to get all like the serious movies. But then after this, the Avengers makes $1 billion, $1.5 billion. So then it kind of becomes all about like setting up the connections and paying off, like rewarding your audience and seeding things in. So I think we see like a little bit of that there. And it also becomes about like being true to the audience and making a fun movie, which was not in style before.
Ever before. Not since 1939.
This is also where like you have to break $1 billion to be like a mega hit.
Okay. And speaking of movies for 2013, the highest grossing movies of this year.
What else came out?
Frozen.
Can I guess?
Oh, okay.
I would have guessed wrong, so go ahead.
A little movie called Frozen. Have you heard of it?
Wow.
It starred Adele Dazeem and the guy from Eoin Colfer's Artemis Fowl movie who can unhinge his jaw. It's a deep
I actually haven't heard of it. Is there anything I would know it from?
Yeah. So Broadway did this thing where they only are doing Disney musicals now. And they did a version of this.
It's a musical?
Yeah. So it's just okay. So
can you sing me a little bit?
So
I think if you sung me a little bit, I would remember.
Do you want to build a snowman? Frozen at $1.3 billion. Iron Man 3, $1.2 billion.
I still haven't seen that.
Me neither. Despicable Me 2, The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug.
What did Despicable Me 2 make?
You got to let us know.
If it's over $1 billion, I'm going to be upset.
It's under $1 billion. Under $1 billion, I'm not marking it down anymore. It doesn't matter.
Good.
Despicable Me 2, The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug, that's also a sequel. The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, also a sequel. Fast and the Furious 6, Monsters University, that's also the number 2 sequel. Gravity and Man of Steel. Thor, The Dark World, also a little number 2 action there. Now to get serious for a second, that's what was grossing. That's what was, the things that were making money.
Gross.
Here's what was winning the critical acclaim that year. 12 Years a Slave winning Best Picture. John Ridley wins for Best Adaptation for 12 Years a Slave. Lupita Nyong'o wins Best Supporting Actress for that film as well. Best Director goes to our boy Alfonso. And Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor go to Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto for Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah.
Some things age better than others. I have a distinct memory of being in a bank in Scotland around this time, and the teller asked me if I was from America, and I was like, yeah. And she was like,
"Are you Jared Leto?"
No, she was like, "Are you from the southern states?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm from North Carolina." And she was like, "I know all about the South. I watched 12 Years a Slave last night." And
Damn.
I was like, "It's not." What I said is, "It's not really like that now."
I mean, not in some places.
Up next, we have a little question, Isaac,
Mm-hmm.
that we like to ask on this podcast. It's got to be something of a tradition. Listeners will be quite familiar with it by now. It's
Is it? Oh wait, no. I think I know this question. I'm an avid listener.
wait, what is it?
Listener will be quite familiar with it by now.
Is it? What's your favorite episode of Mike's Super Short Show?
It is. So what's your favorite episode?
The Holes interview's got to be the best with Shia LaBeouf and like the little sister character or whatever like tries to rap armpits first.
Can you give us a taste of it?
Hell no.
Okay. 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 So a little question we like to ask around here.
Sure, what's good?
Flop or bop? Was this, what do you think?
I don't know, man. It was pretty inconsistent. I think for the most part, it was a bop.
I've never heard a more enthusiastic bop in my life.
It was more kind of like I don't know, instead of like a loud bop, it was kind of like I just hit the laptop. I don't know if you could hear that.
Yeah, we heard it.
So more a boop than a bop?
Yeah,
perhaps?
it's more of a boop. It like tried.
Wade, flop or bop?
It's pretty hard. I like a lot of things about this movie. There are a lot of things I appreciate about it. I will say for sure the fatigue is setting in. Like for sure, having watched 6 of these movies, I am like getting really numb to them. And I don't think this is a bad one. It reminds me the most of the original X-Men. Because I feel like this series at its most middling is kind of like the tropes of the genre patched onto whatever the like fascinations of the time are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think this movie is absolutely as much of its time of 2013 as Origins was of 2009. It's just like a better time of filmmaking. But this movie is like obsessed with parkour.
Oh my god, so much parkour.
And Steadicam. Like I do like this movie, but I feel like so much of it falls flat. Like just watching it, I'm kind of like, it isn't really singing for me. I think I'm going to give it a flop. Yeah. Emmett, flop or bop? The Wolverine.
Wade, I got to tell you, James Mangold, favorite daddy director of all time. This film flopped harder than the old Silver Ninja dude does off the edge of the cliff at the end.
No.
Dang.
Dude, this movie flops harder than the guy who flies off of the bullet train at several hundred miles an hour and hits a steel beam. This movie flopped harder than the lady who falls several stories and then bounces and gets up and still tries to kill some people.
Oh man.
This movie
Wow.
is I'm over it. Like
Yeah.
I think there's some cool stuff in it, but it does not give you anything that like other movies in this series have already given you. Like more of, except for Ninja. Like the Ninja action is exciting, but you're also like there's certainly better martial arts like ninja samurai movies than this movie. So you could go watch those if that's like what you liked about this. Yeah, I think it's a movie that gets by on like talking seriously and like being the sober, serious, gritty one, you know, like especially before Logan came out. But now it's like, it's just like, there's no there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. I really liked this movie when it came out, and also when I rewatched it in 2016. I think because I really like the setting and like the action of it, But rewatching it, I was like, this action is not shot super well.
And
like, it is really cool. And the sequences are so cool. And this movie is brutal, which we need to talk about. Like, this is a hardcore movie. But there isn't like a ton of substance there, I feel like.
Well, I don't think it's like deployed evenly or in a way that like makes the stakes at all clear. There's a lot of like pain.
No.
There's like a lot of painful stuff, but none of it is like really like in any sort of order.
There's also a moment where it feels like the resolution of like the entire motivation of the villain was, oh, we want to give Wolverine an honorable death kind of thing at one point. I was just like, wait, is this really the whole point of all of this, was just to try and kill Wolverine in like a badass way? Like, that's what the villain wanted?
It feels like a lot of this movie is kind of getting at that, because there's the whole thing throughout about like the poison arrows, about like that being like a cheating way to kill someone. And obviously we start with like dropping the nuclear bombs, which was kind of like a cheating way to win a war, you know? So it feels like there's...
The nuclear bomb scene was a bop.
Oh, yeah.
Well, especially because Nagasaki was the second one, too. So it's like it's like a definitely the one that's like kicking somebody while they're down. Dirty shot. I don't know. What do you think about opening with that? I feel like now we've had two in a row open with an atrocity from World War II.
Yeah, I think visually, like the scale of it was like definitely there. It was impactful just to see how much damage Wolverine can actually survive, and just how desperate the situation was, and how it like did kind of create some sort of relationship between Wolverine and Yoshida. But seeing Hugh Jackman be burnt to a crisp and then just like turn back into being Hugh Jackman. Cool. I'm Hugh Jackman. I'm going from being a 10 to like a solid 7.5 back to 10.
Yeah. The practical effect of him where they've like crusted him up is really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's really exciting. Like the first shot of this movie when it's like the foreground and it just starts with like the radio slowly blaring in and then you see the ships coming is so cool. I feel like more than anything, it's just that this is like a thing for these series. Like these movies are about alternate histories. They're about the important moments in our past and like what the X-Men were doing during them. So I think like on an individual basis, we can talk about whether they feel like they're used appropriately or not. But I do think this is like the thing of this series. And it's been here the whole time and it's going to stick around. The first one starts with the Holocaust. So,
and the last one does too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that this is like cheap. I actually think that it's in some ways kind of radical that we never hear an American perspective. Like you never hear anyone being like, the Japanese were doing horrible things in this film, which I was thinking about. You only see like the horror of what it is to be the Japanese soldier and like the way that has affected the culture as time has gone on. Like it's entirely from their perspective.
Yeah, that's true. Another hot button issue at work in this movie is the fact that it is reopening the plot, like we talked about a little bit. It reopens the plot from X-Men The Last Stand. It also is the second in the so-called Wolverine trilogy, which is this movie, X-Men Origins Wolverine and Logan. So what do you think about what this movie does for the timeline and for kind of retroactively fitting together some stories that end the X-Men original trilogy?
Yeah, I guess we're stepping into the continuity corner here. I don't really know how much there is to say about it. It was like a shock when it happened, and it is pretty cool. Oh, actually, I was thinking about this. Like, how many movies in a series do they ever say, like, this one is about dealing with the consequences of another one? Which I thought was pretty cool. The only ones I could think of off the top of my head were Iron Man 3 and Quantum of Solace. And this one, none of which are like considered the high watermarks of the series. But those are the ones I thought of off the top of my head where they were like, we did something crazy in the last one. Instead of moving on to something else crazy, we need a moment to deal with what this character is struggling with. Like the whole movie is about the character getting over what they did in the last movie. So I think that is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does this film contradict anything we've seen before? It's pretty much all new characters, right? Other than the ghost of Jean Grey who's haunting Logan.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't, I don't think, contradict anything.
What is happening? Where do we leave the X-Men at the end of Last Stand? Because that's, at the latest, takes place in 2006, and this takes place in 2011. So it's been at least 5 years between the two.
I believe that we have a Professor X just reincarnated in a new body, and a Magneto just beginning to get his powers back.
Yeah, so everyone who got the cure for their powers has gotten them back. And then it's like Storm leading the team, right?
Yes.
And leading the mansion.
Storm and Beast.
I guess we don't hear if Wolverine just left them or if that's no longer happening and Wolverine's on his own.
Yeah.
Because he was still with them at the end of The Last Stand, right?
Yeah.
He's also always like a protector of children and women and animals. Like in this movie, he goes to bat so many times for like a bear or a child or a young woman. Also in all the other movies, he's like the babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's truly a protector of anything other than a man.
Mm-hmm.
And this is funny because the comics version of this, that this was based on, opens with him killing a grizzly bear. I mean, it's the same bear that he kills in the movie. He does end up killing the bear, but like Wolverine is tracking the bear down to kill it because the hunters have poisoned it, and it's like on a rampage and killing everybody, which is kind of what happens in this movie. But he more like puts it out of its misery in this film. But in that, he like has to track it down and kill it. This is based on a run of comics by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, and they did this. This was the first 4 issues released in the 1980s of the flagship Wolverine comic, about a story about when he goes to Japan to see his love, and then things go from bad to worse because her dad, who looked like he was dead, has shown back up in the picture. He like puts Wolverine to this test. There's no talk about this like kryptonite stuff and these bugs crawling on his heart in the comic. It's more just like he gets dishonored by her dad, and like she doesn't, like she's about to marry this other guy, and you know he's crushed about that. And then Yukio actually comes in as like a femme fatale and like seduces him and does all this crazy stuff and is trying to kill him and is really working for her dad, who is evil. So it's a little different. It's a little the same. They invented a new character for this movie, which is the Viper Lady, I think, or at least they took her from somewhere else.
She's a character in the comics, but not in that series.
Not in this series. They pulled her in from somewhere else and put her on. There's much less of this stuff about his healing powers. It's more just like a straight up, like almost noir about like, you know, Wolverine becoming a samurai and like regaining his honor by going through all these trials and then like killing the girl's dad. And she should be his like mortal enemy, but because she realized that her dad was like a dishonor on their house, she like decided that would be okay. And they end up getting married. So it's like this really wonderful rom-com for Logan. I'm sure that doesn't last very long.
Wow.
I'm sure like some horrible thing happens to her later on in the comics, but that's how that run ends. So he actually stays, unlike at the end of this movie too.
Is there anything with him losing the healing power?
Not in that. There's a lot. In the comics, there's just a lot more reference to how much it hurts and how much of a badass he is all the time. Especially in this. Like there's so many long explanation of like how badass the guards are and all the kind of weaponry they have and like all this shit. And then it says, too bad they met me. Or like some other like one liner like that, you know, and then there's just like panel after panel of them getting just like completely wrecked by Wolverine, like all these ninjas. So that's pretty exciting.
I have a quote here from James Mangold about the healing thing. He said, "If you have a hero who can't be hurt, there's only one way to create stakes, and that's to put people he cares about in harm's way. And, not unlike the amnesia thing, that can get tired really fast. I think there's so much to mine in Logan without robbing him of self-knowledge. What I wanted to present to the audience was, what is it like to feel a prisoner in a life you cannot escape? You accumulate pain and loss and keep that with you as you keep on going."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that lack of the healing stuff is cool. I think Mangold is the first person who has looked at Wolverine and said, what's something I can do with this character?
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, and I think it's a smart take on it. I think Jackman's pretty good in this.
After being pretty bad.
He's pretty bad in the last ones, though, which you like never think that Hugh Jackman is bad in anything, but he is pretty bad. I think he's not all the way back, but he is pretty good in this. It feels like there's a part in real life where he's kind of like being Wolverine means bodybuilding. Like being like, if I'm playing the Wolverine again, what that means is I have to only eat eggs for a year. And that's like the only thing I have to do.
But that was also a time of acting as well, where like everyone was doing that. Even if it like you have Christian Bale doing like all the crazy shit for Batman and then like getting super like putting on a bunch of weight for American Hustle and then losing it again for whatever else, you know.
That's
and
just
like
Christian Bale's thing.
But like I feel like that was a lot of people's thing at this time, was like, oh, like the guys who did 300 had to eat like 40 chickens a week and like you know, like had to do 700 push-ups every hour and all sorts of shit, you know. That's how they got those gorgeous CGI abs.
Okay, lots of crazy action sequences in this movie. What were your favorite action beats, Isaac?
I liked the first initial like encounter with the Yakuza at the funeral. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Just a really good chase sequence, and like that's always fun. And then everything else after that was just kind of like, all right, we're making Wolverine cut people's face off again.
Was it ever clear why the Yakuza were like trying to shoot up her family?
So from what I understood, her fiance was put up to it by her dad. So
no, oh wait, her fiance? You mean the businessman guy?
The Secretary of Defense or something, like
right.
Like he's the guy that literally is in charge of like the police, but he's also in charge of the Yakuza. And
he's like, also in charge of partying, baby.
That scene was pretty funny.
He would have still died from that level.
Oh yeah, just like hitting the water like that.
Yeah, no, he would have. Yeah,
and the way he was spinning and stuff out of the window, like he would not have landed well. No, that dude's spaghetti, man. The train sequence made me upset. I'll go and say that. The train sequence.
Okay, how do you feel about it?
Because it's like it was one of those things where it just shows the inconsistency of his adamantine skeleton. It's like, okay, cool. Can he cut through ceramic sinks like butter, or can he not like tear through an aluminum train? Like with as fast as he was like flying through the air, like on top of the train, there's no reason why the hardest metal in the universe wouldn't just cleave that train in two. As fast as he was moving, like inertia or not, it's like, no.
Could a regular human being be on top of one of those things going 300 miles an hour?
Hell no. But apparently the Yakuza decided to be Superman. Like, and 3 of them did, not just like 1 or 2 guys, but like 3 Yakuza were just like, I can survive 300 mile per hour winds.
That's kind of in the run where we get like all the Japanese things, because we get like the Yakuza, and then they go to the pachinko parlor, and then they go to the bullet train, and then they go to the Love Hotel, and then they're like out in the village, like by the ocean. So you kind of get, that's where they do like the run of like all the famous Japanese things, I feel like.
We are, just so you guys know, we are in Japan.
Yeah, they did actually shoot it in Japan, which is cool. Yeah. It isn't in like a street in Los Angeles they made to look like it. It also is actually like all Japanese actors from Japanese cinema. Like almost everyone in this is like either the first English language film they do or like one of the only English language films they do, which is pretty cool. I think that they weren't just like, let's get Henry Golding, like let's get Jet Li, like let's get the American actors who are always playing Asian characters to come in and fill out this cast. Like it feels authentic to that culture in a way that a lot of other movies trying to be all about one culture don't.
I thought the Japanese stuff was cool. I wonder how many of those Japanese actors were excited about working with both Hugh Jackman and off-brand Margot Robbie.
She was supposed to be Jessica Biel, and then it like fell through pretty late in the process, and then they got the Russian actress who played her. I mean, do you have her name?
Not in front of me. It's Svetlana something.
I do have her name. Yeah, it's Svetlana Hodchenkova, who was also in Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, and these are her only 2 English language films. But she's been in like a ton of stuff in Russia, and she was like hugely awarded there. But like these are her only 2 English language films. How do we feel about her as Viper? Let's go through the cast then.
She had one of my least favorite villain archetypes, where it was, I'm going to have 4 lines in each scene and say nothing in each of them.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to tell you absolutely nothing about my character except I'm the bad guy, and there's no reason.
Yeah.
I was also just over her at her second appearance, where she was like, "I'm a something. I'm a nihilist. I'm a capitalist, etc." And it's like, what are you talking about?
What about at the end when she was like, "I'm immune to every poison on Earth, including men"?
Like
stunning. It's yeah.
She's also presumably like a one-off villain, which is maybe confusing, but as we've said, I'm always happy to see any villain that isn't William Stryker Magneto in this series. So I do celebrate that. But she isn't working for anyone. She's just evil because she's evil.
Yeah,
and that's why she does all this stuff.
Yeah. There's like no motivation other than the fact, well, I'm the bad guy in this movie, so I have to be the bad guy.
And her death is brutal.
Yeah.
So much stuff in this movie is brutal.
Drilling into his skeleton, that was pretty... Oh,
yeah.
Self-inflicted heart surgery thing was just like...
God.
It's just like absurd. Like, it goes from... He's like, I gotta find out what's wrong with me. And then he looks... He's like, oh, there's a bug in my heart. You gonna want to not turn around for this one. It's like... Also, I guess it's just the super chair was able to pick up on his vitals without like having any kind of like anything in him.
Any sort of anything.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, this is definitely wrong with me. I know exactly what to do now.
Like, really? In touch your own heart?
Yeah.
Yeah, that part was pretty crazy. That's where I was like, which came out first, this or Prometheus? I think it was Prometheus. See, when I would think back about this movie, I would just remember like the sequences. I was like, it's all killer sequences. You've got the funeral and the bullet train and the like pregnancy taking out the thing and where he walks through with all the arrows and where he fights the guy. But then like watching it, those sequences are all cool. They're just maybe not particularly shot super well in 2013. And there's not like a ton that connects them. I think the other big problem is that like everything I love about this movie ended, and then I was like, oh, there's still 40 minutes left in this. Mm-hmm. What else happens?
Yeah, for real. What else does happen in this movie? Can we step through Mariko and her boyfriends, her list here?
Yeah, Mariko has 3 boyfriends in this movie, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
She's got the lame boyfriend who is like the businessman
the other lame boyfriend who's the nice guy.
She's got the cool boyfriend who's like the badass warrior samurai
who's also 95 years old.
The black gang, the cool gang. Yeah, he did look a little too old for her. But then she's also got Hugh Jackman, who's the Canadian boyfriend,
who's also 95 years old.
Has to be double her age in real life. I know in the character's life he's like 300 and she's like 20. Yeah. But like in real life, it must be at least double.
Yeah.
She's pretty good though. Should we talk about the performances? How do we feel about Mariko? Tayo Okamoto as Mariko. It's her first film.
Oh.
She's in Westworld now.
Okay. Yeah, no, she was great. I thought she was good.
Yeah, I really liked her. I liked kind of like the dignified character she bought. She reminded me of real people I know who are like feel such the pressure at all times of their family and like responsibility. People I know in like small towns who are like leaders of the community who like really couldn't make friends, but were always like, you know, took like 2 hours to get dressed and wear makeup every morning and like care so much about their presentation. And then it's like really kind of lonely inside under that. I liked her a lot. Yeah. And then you've got, Will Young Lee as Harada, who is the samurai boyfriend. How do we feel about him?
You mean the ninja boyfriend?
Yes, the ninja boyfriend. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I need to enter every single scene with a side flip.
Okay.
Dude, he spins like 4 times in a row in one scene.
He is doing so much parkour and not a lot else. Like, there's just not much written for him in this movie to do.
No.
I think he's pretty charming, though.
I think he has a compelling arc, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like a really weird turn at the end that he's working with Viper, even though he knows it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I was very... How did that even happen?
Because he realized that the old man was in the ninja suit all along.
Which was just like, I don't know, how they set that up was just... Because we didn't actually see the character die. We saw him being wheeled away. Then we saw the funeral with the casket. And it's like, we never saw a body. Of course he's going to show up later. But then it's like, the twist. He's inside the suit. I'm like, of course he's inside the suit. Like, yeah. There's a moment where it tried to make you believe that it was just like an automaton, but no, we're in a samurai Gundam right now. It's okay.
Also, Yukio, whose power is seeing how people die, comes and says, he dies. I didn't see him die. That's like how we learn that he's dead. And it's like, if the first thing we know is that you can see people die and you didn't see him die, he's probably not dead.
Yeah.
That's Haruhiko Yamanouchi as Yoshida, the old man. Any thoughts on the old man?
I think he was fine. More so when he was in the hospital bed than when he was trying to actually be a villain.
Yeah, he was better as like that sympathetic old guy. Kind of creepy, offering him the creepy thing. You know, that's cool. But yeah, when he's the villain...
When he's in the samurai suit, he's like, this is the only thing sustaining me. It's like, is it though? Because you didn't really die. Like, they didn't put you in the suit and then you come back to life. Like, you didn't die to begin with. They just said that you did.
Also, like, if you were dying and then you put on a metal suit, would that help you live longer?
Yeah, there was no explanation as to why it's sustaining him.
It's a dirt.
Because he didn't... Did he actually steal some of Wolverine's healing power? Or did they just put that thing in to take the healing power away, but no one else was getting it?
She just gave him a toxin that was not even like the Wolverine killer toxin. It was just literally this toxin suppresses mutants, like genetic, like abilities and stuff.
Oh. How do you figure that out?
Well, I mean, that's just what I took away from it, because like she says something like in that encounter with Harada where it's like, oh, they're working together, but Harada also has like 90 other guys working with him that all can do the same thing that he does.
Yeah,
but yeah, she mentions like that she was able to suppress him, which she wouldn't know that otherwise if she hadn't tried it before. Viper hasn't been researching Wolverine for years on end, and it's like, oh, this will definitely work at suppressing his power. Surely she would have had to test that on other mutants to begin with.
But doesn't someone... Okay, I guess that's Yoshida and not Viper. But Yoshida has the file of like all the history of Wolverine where we see the pictures of him with the X-Men and like the whole dissertation on him.
That's true.
You've also got Hiroyuki Sanada as Shingen Yoshida, the son/father. He's from The Last Samurai. He's also in Avengers Endgame. He's the guy the member of the Yakuza who Hawkeye kills in that strange sequence. And I'm very excited about this, he's going to be Scorpion in the big budget Mortal Kombat movie next year.
Oh, wow.
Hell yeah.
I'm very excited about that. But how do we feel about him in this?
I think I wish he was in it so much more.
Straight
I
up.
think, yeah, like he's so cool. He's like intense, and you're like, oh shit, there's subtext when that man talks.
Yeah.
Like there's something going on.
Yeah, his performance was stellar, but his character was just, there was not enough written for him. He did fantastic with what he was given.
Yeah, it feels like they knew that he's like the big actor in the movie because he has kind of like some of the big scenes, you know, and he's treated with like a little more gravitas than the other characters. But yeah, he doesn't get a lot. His last fight is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like the him Wolverine fight is maybe the highlight of the movie to me.
Mm-hmm. It is so awesome. It's also in this movie, there's kind of like taking one character and splitting him into two different characters from the comic. So Shinjin is just her dad is like the main villain in that comic, and maybe in some later comics, like other relatives of hers come into play, but in this one, it's just the one guy. So the idea of like splitting it into the two, the father figure, the good cop, bad cop thing, where it's like my grandfather who I loved versus my dad who we knew the whole time was an asshole. Turns out your granddad is also trying to kill you.
There's still one cast member we haven't talked about, which I can't believe we've gotten this far, because she is my favorite part of this movie. It's Rila Fukushima as Yukio.
Oh,
I love this movie because I love Yukio. I'm a card-carrying member of the Yukio fan club. I have been since 2013. I always will be. I think she is the coolest thing about this movie. I think she's so good in it. This is also her first film, her first acting job ever. She was also a model like Mariko. And I love her dynamic with Wolverine. I like the dynamic of like the kind of young girl who also is a badass and then like becomes his sidekick. I love their relationship. I love her behavior in every scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think her power is so cool. Like, you're a mutant and your only power is that you see how people die. And like the way they use it throughout this movie. Also, the end of this movie that it ends with them going off together to like be a team in the future is so exciting to me. Sorry if you guys were about to say you didn't like her. You can still say that. But how do you guys feel about Yukio?
I liked Yukio. I think the only character I didn't like in this movie was Viper.
Viper feels like she's from like a much schlockier, cheaper action movie than the rest of the movie feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true.
The big criticism of this movie from reviewers at the time was just that it like bungles the third act, that it kind of becomes like schlocky action. So I was trying to find anything I could about like there being reshoots or like arguments over the third act or stuff, but I couldn't find much. So maybe it was always the vision for it to do that, and then it just got executed a little bit less well than the rest of it did.
Yeah.
Damn.
So everyone loved the Wolverine Japan miniseries. Gavin Hood, before this movie was being planned, put in the theatrical post-credit scene of Origins where Wolverine is drinking at a bar in Japan to like hint that we would be going to Japan sometime. After Origins came out in May 2009, they greenlit a sequel. It was going to be it was written by Christopher McQuarrie, who you will remember for writing the first one and then denying credit for his name to be attached to it. He, at this point, had just finished writing Valkyrie for Bryan Singer, and it was going to be directed. Well, first they asked Bryan Singer, as it should be noted, they have on every single movie since X2, which was the last one he directed. Like in all of them, they first go to Bryan Singer and say, will you direct this? And in all of them, he's doing something else or doesn't want to. So they got Darren Aronofsky, who had worked with Jackman previously in The Fountain. I'm going to read through Darren Aronofsky's films, and maybe I'll just ask if you guys have seen any of them or if you feel a way about him. His first film was Pi, which I actually do like. And then he did Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain. He was just coming off of The Wrestler when he signed on to make this movie. And also working on Black Swan. And then he goes on after that to do Noah and Mother. He's kind of like, he's a very specific auteur. I don't know if people have seen those movies or have any feelings about Aronofsky.
He loves pain.
They're kind of like, well, Requiem for a Dream is like the most hardcore anti-drug after-school PSA ever. Like, it's a movie where like horrible, horrific things happen to characters to tell you not to do drugs. Mother is also a movie where horrible, horrific things happen to characters to tell you
not to be a parent.
What takes place in the Bible? How the universe was made?
About global warming?
Yeah, I guess that's also true. And kind of with Noah, Yeah, I guess we don't have any Aronofsky stands in here. He's like generally loved and like thought of as a brilliant auteur. His stuff has never really connected with me. I feel like he's someone who just is like a little bit overblown. I don't know what he would have done with this movie.
Yeah.
He had worked with Jackman before. McQuarrie wrote the whole thing, finished his draft, but that same month they were supposed to start filming. Aronofsky dropped out. He said, "As I talked more about the film with my collaborators at Fox, it became clear that the production of the Wolverine would keep me out of the country for a year. I was not comfortable being away from my family for that length of time. I'm sad that I won't be able to see the project through, as it is a terrific script, and I am very much looking forward to working with my friend Hugh Jackman again." So like a pretty sweet and honest director denial, more than the other ones we get in this series. And Fox didn't like rush to fill him right away because of the Tohoku tsunami, which also happened at the same time. I don't know if you guys remember this, but the great tsunami of 2011.
Yeah.
I remember watching like old staticky YouTube clips of it. So they hired Mangold in June 2011. They hired Mark Baumbach to rewrite the script. The filming was delayed because Hugh Jackman was shooting Les Mis. They shot it in fall 2012 in Australia and in Tokyo. So the original cut of this movie was 2 hours and 35 minutes. It was half an hour longer. I don't know. Did it feel to you guys like it was rushed?
Rushed as in like its pacing, or just rushed as in
like the pacing. It doesn't feel to me necessarily like a movie that was chopped up to hell. Like it doesn't feel like we're missing plot points.
No, I feel like it. I mean, we already mentioned how in the third act it gets kind of schlocky or whatever, but yeah, I think the third act does kind of rush a little bit, but
I don't think the third act problems would be solved by seeing more of the third act.
Yeah.
There is a like extended edition of this that came on the DVD. It's an unrated version.
Ooh.
It's 2:19. So it's like 13 minutes longer. I have seen it once. It's just that there's like another fight with the Black Clan when he gets to the village before like the whole arrow sequence. There's like another long fight with them. And then like all of the sequences just have like a little more blood or like a few shots that were too intense to make the PG-13 rating. But there's no like significant plot stuff in that. That's different at all.
Yeah.
The post-credit scene for this was written by Simon Kinberg, who is writing the next film we're going to watch, Days of Future Past, but it was actually shot by Mangold. Mangold said that this was kind of originally intended to be totally separate, but Bryan Singer asked him while he was working on Days of Future Past to like change a couple things to make it work with that continuity, which Mangold did, and Mangold himself shot the post-credit scene. This movie got a 61 on Metacritic. It was liked at the time for the craftsmanship and the cast. Big criticism was the ending, which we already talked about. A lot of the reviews I read compared it favorably to the other movies of the year. We heard a lot of those at the time, but like a shocking amount of the reviews I read were like, compared to everything else we've seen this summer, this is like a breath of fresh air.
Damn.
Particularly The Lone Ranger. So many of them mention The Lone Ranger. I pulled this review quote particularly for you, Emmett, because it was harping on some things that you like, perhaps more than I do. This is from A.A. Dowd at the AV Club. He said, "Now here's a comic book movie. In a summer that's delivered one overstuffed Phase 2 sequel and a bloated reboot designed to establish a whole new universe of interconnected franchises, The Wolverine has a self-contained efficiency that's hard to resist." A.O. Scott of the New York Times also wrote, "A modest superhero picture may sound like a contradiction, but really it is a welcome respite."
This was modest? I mean, I guess in comparison to, right? Like what?
Yeah,
the
this
Avengers?
is really modest. Like the scale of it is that they have to save one girl.
Yeah. And if they don't save one girl, she dies, and that's it.
I mean, compared to all the other movies in this series, like...
it's not New York City or the end of the world or...
Yeah, in The Last Stand, they blow up the world. In Origins, they blow up the world. In First Class, they're about to blow up the world. Like, the stakes are so much smaller than the other films we've seen in this series. It is a lot more intimate, which is cool. Maybe there are, like, growing pains because this is the first film in the franchise we've seen where they're like, it's not really about moving the whole story forward. It's just about telling one story with this specific character. This is kind of what the films become from here on out, where they're like, this is a story with this group of the X-Men, with this group of Wolverine, with Deadpool, you know.
Yeah. Which leads us to a question that we love to ask here, and that listeners to the show will be familiar with at this point, is who is the protagonist and what do they want? Isaac, who would you say is the protagonist of this film, The Wolverine?
The protagonist of this movie is Hugh Jackman. He is the Wolverine. He is the protagonist of this movie because it is named after Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine. And he wants... What's funny is people keep trying to convince him that he wants to die. Does he ever actually say that? Like, we know you want to die. It's like, I mean, yeah, I guess I could.
Well, there's kind of like a thing with the ghost of Jean Grey he keeps seeing or whatever, who's like, come with me, like,
you
just die and come live with me.
Here's why I hate that. You honestly think someone that's seen as much shit as Wolverine, that's lived as long as he has, believes in any kind of afterlife?
Yeah, I think it's also like not really Jean Grey, obviously, because I think she would be like, deal with your stuff and figure it out. I don't think she would like, come die and live with me,
come
baby.
Die with me, baby. Like,
look at my left breast. Also, Jean Grey, I counted, has 27 lines in The Last Stand, her film, and has 22 lines in this movie. And I think she's handled a little better in this one than in that one.
She has more lines than Viper.
That may be true.
That may, in fact, be true. So, but what did he want?
I think he just wanted to be left alone. Like, he was like, I'm just doing this so I can go back home. And then, like, he just kind of gets wrapped up in it. He's like, I do just want to go home, but I guess I got to help while I'm here.
And then he fooled around.
Yeah, and then he fooled around. He's like, what? He was like, yeah, whatever, cool. I can do this for a minute. I got about another 60 years on me. So
it's hard because he's not active at all at the beginning. Like, you could say what he wants is to find a reason to live. And it is true that he's kind of like flirting with death, but only in his dreams.
Yeah.
But we don't see him like being suicidal. We don't see him like looking for a new thing to do. He's just living in a cave.
Yeah.
And then Yukio comes and finds him and starts the plot.
You know, I don't think he actively wants anything. But people keep telling him what he wants. And it's like,
I think at the beginning he wants to be left alone. And at the end he like finds a new purpose, a new thing to do with his life.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's like the arc. I don't know what his actual objective is throughout this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe rescue America. How do we feel about the treatment of their romance?
Too swift, not delicate enough, not played out as wonderfully as it could be, but certainly a hell of a lot better than his romance with Kayla. So, you know, there's that.
We hear Kayla in this movie too. We hear him yell like, Kayla, I love you, in one of his dreams, but we don't see her. Imagine if he had woken up and he had the dead ghost of Jean Grey on one side and the dead ghost of Kayla from X-Men Origins on the other side.
Oh, man. Yeah, I thought their relationship was okay. I don't know how she didn't flinch when he, like, woke up. Also, why did he dream about a samurai? Like, that came to attack him? Like, just a classically dressed samurai?
Well, that's supposed to be the Silver Samurai, right? Because he, like, sees that armor at the beginning, too.
No,
But it is, like, when he dreams about Viper, that's really happening. Like, she actually snuck into his room and put a little leech in his stomach. But, like, the Silver Samurai didn't actually... I guess someone came and kidnapped Mariko. No, that's not that scene. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's like when he wakes up and, like, he has his claws out or whatever, and Mariko's just like, hey, you awake?
Perhaps I can lend some illumination here.
Do it.
In the comic, he dreams of himself as a samurai, and he's a samurai in the old times, and nobody loves him because he's not good enough for Mariko. Her name is still Mariko, even in the old times. Mm-hmm. And so he has to go and fight for many miles through many soldiers in a scene that is described as being much like the scene, like at the end of this movie where he gets shot with a bunch of arrows. And finally, he's dying. He's killed everyone, and he crawls into into the garden where Mariko is, and he's dying in her arms, and he says, "But why?" And she says, "Because you're an animal." So it could just be a throwback to the fact that he can never love her. He's never going to be good enough for her.
I thought it was handled okay. I think this movie is like going for adult drama, and that's where it feels the most kind of like a romance novel, is when they're like off in the cottage. You get like the Beauty and the Beast scene of her teaching him how to eat soup, and they're doing all of that stuff. I think it's handled okay, but it does feel weird just because he's so much older, and because she has two other boyfriends. Yeah. She goes from 3 boyfriends to 0 boyfriends across this movie, so that's got to be tough.
Yeah.
How many people got killed in this movie, Emmett?
Let me do the final tally. I did keep an accurate count this time around. I just need to total it up.
The brutality in this movie is wild. Like, we see so many impalings, so many swords going through guts.
Which, as we said before, that is just Wolverine's like power.
Yeah.
It's just impaling people.
This movie, it's either a 42 or a 44. It's hard to read my own chicken scratch there. And this is ones that I definitely for sure saw happen on screen.
Yeah.
There might, like, given the volume of some of the fights in this movie, there might even be more that I missed. So it's very bloody. It's very violent. Particular deaths that I would recount as being particularly gruesome would be Viper's death, for sure. She gets clonked going up and going down on the elevator thing. That's awful. The dude who gets stuck in the throat and then by Viper and then fights and then gets stuck in the throat also by Wolverine. Brutal.
Oh, the dude that Viper spat on his face.
Yeah. The guy who he stabs in the hand at the beginning, he doesn't even die, but that's just nasty, dude. And you see him pour alcohol into the guy's like cut up hand.
Oh, and if you want those 3 guys in the bar did die off screen, according to Yukio.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. True. It feels like this movie is going for like dour, morose, gritty adult drama. Like, there's the shot of Wolverine at the Love Hotel, like bleeding in the pouring rain on the balcony overlooking the city. Like, it feels like that's what they were going for, but I think the writing would just need to be a little bit stronger and like more substantial to pull it off, because they do pull it off in the action, which we're talking about. The action is like brutal and hard hitting, but then you're kind of left with that as the main thought about this movie, because the other stuff doesn't stand up to the same level.
I thought the veterinarian doing like surgery on Wolverine was cute. I thought that was a funny little comedy moment. Not convinced that guy still had his hands after doing that.
For real.
Because she said that he like in his sleep he like cut him or whatever, like while he was working on him. And it's like, how he still has at least all his fingers.
Okay, Wade, you talked about it a little bit with this film's treatment of the women characters, but let's just lay it on the line. Did this film pass the Bechdel test?
This film did pass the Bechdel test.
Woo, woo.
Not only did it do that, I actually have an article here from July 29th, 2013 from Vulture by Kyle Buchanan. It says, "The Wolverine is this summer's Bechdel-friendly blockbuster." So it was like so notable for its treatment of female characters that there were whole articles about it. This is a long interview with James Mangold. I recommend anyone check it out, but I'm going to read a few sections from it. This is Kyle Buchanan's writing. As coined by cartoonist Alison Bechdel, a movie passes the Bechdel test if it has at least 2 women in it who talk to each other about something other than a man. It seems like a simple test to ace, and yet it's more than summer movies like The Lone Ranger, Pacific Rim, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Monsters University could manage, which makes last weekend's The Wolverine a rare bright spot. Here's a big action movie that passes the Bechdel test early and often, with 4 lead roles for women. It's startling to me because the test is so easy to pass, notes the Wolverine's director James Mangold, who says of his movie's women, "They all have missions. They all have jobs to do other than be the object of affection." Logan is retreating from all intimacy and is grieving for the death of the great woman in his life, so the idea of surrounding him with an incredibly interesting spectrum of strong females, this idea that almost everyone besides him in this film is female, was a real inspiration for this movie. says Mangold. I love the idea that structurally, this is Logan's 8.5. It's a very strong tableau of women with dark agendas, women with self-destructive agendas, women with protective agendas, dead women, alive women, who each are playing a different role. Continues Mangold. I think the trickiest thing is the idea of likability, which is a very interesting and often used industry parlance about a character. I think that there is sometimes an anxiety on the part of studio executives that a female character has to pass a higher threshold of likability than the men do. That, I think, is a reflection of our real world. On the studio side, there is a concern that if too much of your darkness is in your female characters or a kind of mixed agenda, the audience may reject them. It's something that is a double standard in our society still. It's a challenge for people making narratives of any kind to push against.
Damn.
Which I think is absolutely true. And I think we, in some ways, see a lot of cliches of women and minority characters because people are like, they can't be the bad guy. Like, they can't have a life other than be perfect if we're going to put them on screen, which does reduce them to less than like regular thinking people. I guess that thought that like anyone who's not like a straight white man doesn't have to represent every straight white man, but any character who's not one of those things, because of the limited access to them we see on screen, is just representing like whatever they are. Yeah, I think this movie has the strongest variety of roles for women we've seen yet. The most women in it. I love that about it. I think that there are obviously still like, you know, like it's not perfect. Like Mariko is kind of defined by her relationship to all these different men. She is kidnapped in this. Viper is strange.
I was going to say, like, she's more than an object of desire because, I mean, but she's just an object of hatred instead. She doesn't do anything. Like, she's not, Viper's not really objectified in a like romantic way, but she's certainly not a character. She's like a plot object. She's not like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, she doesn't have a big arc. And I'm assuming they're counting her as one of the 4 big roles for women, which I guess is fair. Like, she is the villain, but there's not much there to be played.
Yeah.
I also was thinking about like how little representation on the creative side we see in this whole series from women, which I think really stinks and just would like make some of these movies stand out from each other in any way whatsoever. I think that's part of why First Class felt like such a breath of fresh air, because it was co-written by a woman. I know that none of these films are directed by women. I'm not sure if there are other female writers as we go on. But it's interesting, too, because this whole franchise is run by a woman, is run by Lauren Shula Donner, and that's like one of the only Hollywood franchises that doesn't have like one big, powerful man behind it. It has one big, powerful woman who's like overlooked it and produced all of them from the beginning. And I'm not blaming this on her. I know that's the entire Hollywood culture. But I just wish with how many of these movies there are, we could ever see like some creative force coming from women. But I think this film does have really strong women. Almost every side character is a woman. And it also doesn't really have any male gaze issues at all, which is very different for this series. And you've even got Viper in like the really sexy costume and Jean Grey in the nightgown. But it's like in all those, like the center of the shots is their heads, not their boobs, or like there's no like shot from behind of Viper like we get of Storm and of Mystique and all the early X-Men movies, you know? Like it feels like they are just wearing sexy clothes because that's a thing that people do, not because you need people to pay money to see them like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that they finally got something right. For one of our last questions before we wrap this whole thing up, we call it the MVP OTW, the most valuable player other than Wolverine in this movie.
Yeah, I'd have to give it to Yukio. She's just a cool character, and she like Wade said earlier, she is the whole reason that the plot starts.
Yukio. Wade.
Well, mine was going to be Yukio. I guess I'm going to go with Mariko then, although I did like Harada too, but I'm gonna go with Mariko. I think she's really good in this, and I think it's also like remarkable, like we said, that both her and Yukio, this is their first acting roles, and I think they're the two strongest performances of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like you totally believe every second that Mariko is who she is. Like she sells that dignity and that position she has. And I also think that she sells those romance scenes, which could just be god awful if they were in lesser hands, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it to her. Emmett, who's your MVP OTW?
Okay, my MVP OTW is going to be a little dude named Shinjin Yoshida, my friend. This dude is not in enough of this movie. I think if they ditched the granddad and like had him actually be dead and actually be a good person,
like Shinji becomes a silver samurai. Like,
yeah.
Oh, that'd be so much cooler.
That'd be the movie I want to see.
Like, and that's like what you want to see, right? And like, and then he gets the big dramatic thing at the edge of the cliff, you know? And so it's like I want to see more of him and Mariko's relationship. I want to see him and Mariko and Yukio like all going at it together, like a fight scene between like the three of them where the two have to like come together as sisters to defeat their dad or something like that because Wolverine's disabled in whatever way. Like I just think like he's so cool. He's such a good actor. And yeah, he sells it once those two are already taken also.
Isaac, any final thoughts on the Wolverine?
I wish we had seen Mariko's knife skills.
Oh yeah, there's the one shot in the funeral scene, I think it's with Yukio, but where she does like the whole like flip the knife, punch someone, grab the falling knife, which was so cool.
Oh, dude. Wait, any last thoughts on the Wolverine?
Yeah, I think this movie is a lot better than we've given it credit for, and that our tone of voice suggests. Like, compared to the rest of the movies in this series, this is definitely, like, high up there. And I think its treatment of women is commendable and stands out from the rest of the series. And I think the way the action is like sequenced and choreographed and the creativity of all the sequences, both are really commendable. I think it's just like, it doesn't sing, but like this movie is much closer to working than almost all of the other movies we've seen in this series. I think just at this point, both in this series and the rest of the world, we've seen so many superhero movies that you have to like actually be good to stand out. Like, I think probably when this movie came out, if you were like a 3 or 4 star functional movie with some interesting things, you could make it as a superhero movie that like people talked about and said was really good. And I think now in 2020, you have to be like a 5-star masterpiece with incredible direction, incredible acting, like unbelievable sequencing and music
and
to stand out from to stand out from the rest of them. And I think that they don't do anything interesting enough with Hugh Jackman here. Like, I feel like his character is always just being kind of dragged through whatever the events of the plot are, and never really an agent of himself, you know?
Yeah.
Where's the sense of humor in this film?
Yeah, you see it in that veterinarian scene. You see it when he goes through the metal detector and he's like, hip replacement.
That was a good joke, but
you see it in the cutaways to Mariko when she's listening to like soothing music as the fight is happening. Like, there are these little bits that I guarantee almost all of those are like directorial touches, like not there in the script. These little moments that stand out from the rest of the pack, but it's so dour all in all.
There's also there was a sense of humor with Mariko's rich boyfriend getting thrown out the window, and you know, we have the line from Yukio saying, "How'd you know there's a pool there?" And he says, "I didn't."
Yeah, he also says, "Don't you lecture me standing there in your red underwear."
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny. Which made me think, what kind of underwear do you think Wolverine wears? Here's a question for both of you.
He's so hairy that he doesn't
wear underwear.
He doesn't wear underwear, please. he wouldn't wear clothes if it was socially acceptable.
So you think he's not insulting the fact that they're red, but the fact that he's wearing underwear?
Yeah. He's like,
don't you talk to me like that in your underwear.
It's like, want to take those off and get real in here.
I don't know actually like the fashion history, but he may be from the time before there was underwear.
Probably.
I don't
know.
think Canada.
I think he wears tidy whities.
I still don't think that Canada has underwear.
Okay, Emmett, any final thoughts?
To your Canadian fans, do you guys have underwear?
Yeah, please write us at cinnamonbumspod@gmail.com and tell us if you wear underwear if you're Canadian. And let the record reflect that it was Emmett who said that and not me. Emmett, any final thoughts on the Wolverine?
Yeah, frankly, I don't think it matters what kind.
What kind of underwear he wears? What?
Never mind. Where that was going was no place we wanted to be. So, Isaac, I will simply ask you, is there anything that you're working on that you would like to plug? Any upcoming projects, anywhere that our listeners, our devoted listeners, can hear from you and see more of your work?
No.
Our devoted listener.
I do have a miniatures painting Instagram that I'm about to start up again. I've been kind of on hiatus for a year now, but I've started painting again lately, and I'm getting to a place where I'm like happy with everything that I'm working on again. So I'll probably start working on that again. Follow me at Isaac Tries a Hobby.
Right on.
Just all as one word.
At Isaac Tries a Hobby on Instagram. Check out the little painted miniatures. They're going to be so cool.
All the weird space aliens and dwarves and all sorts of crazy shit.
How did we feel about Wolverine's preferred scenario is the outer space mission in the Love Hotel? Because they were like doctor's office. I forget what the third one was. Dungeon. It was dungeon, doctor's office, or mission to Mars.
Well, William Stryker's never attacked him on Mars.
I was thinking it was a place. Mars was like a more neutral space rather than a dungeon or a doctor's office, because both imply that someone's going to be dominating in some way.
Well, presumably one of them was being the rocket ship and the other person was being the astronaut. But
all right, well, then I will leave you all with this. But happy holidays to you and to yours.
Happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa.
And happy Yuletide also.
Happy Boxing Day to our Canadian listeners.
Yes.
I care about you even if Emmett doesn't.
Wow. I actually celebrate Boxing Day, so get with that. Culture. So next week we'll have our favorite films of 2020 holiday special podcast, which will be fun to talk about something topical. And we will be back in the new year with the X-Men Days of Future Past from 2014. See you then, and kiss somebody on New Year's Eve for me. Cinema Bums is a production of DKG Podcast. It is created and produced by Wade Lawrence Holloman and me, Emmett Temple. Wade also edits and mixes this podcast. Our theme music is by Zane Holloman, who you can find on Bandcamp, and our show art is by Autumn Beckner. Our social media is managed by Laura Bennett. If you like what you hear, please tell all your friends and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, the two best ways to spread the word about our work. You can also follow us on Instagram at CinemaBums or email us at cinemabumspod@gmail.com. Don't flake on us. We'll be back next week.